Hey there everybody, Coach Brandon here today with Coach Ant, and he's going to be helping me introduce you guys to our second half of the Takedown chapter. Now our topic this week, as we move through our standing skills chapter, is going to be countering an opponent's takedown. Now understand that there's never a time when your opponent is going to be more vulnerable than when they go to attack you. Now you got to make sure you're not vulnerable when they attack, because obviously their attack can land on you. But if you are prepared for their attack and you adequately defend it, oftentimes your opponent will be left in an out of balance position, or they'll be overextended in ways that will let you take advantage of it and get a takedown on them. Let's think about boxing. In the sport of boxing, you have a puncher who takes a stance like this. They roll their shoulders up over their jaw. They bring their hands in front of their cheekbones, in front of the jaw, and it is very, very tough to get punches through on a boxer who's focused on only defending. But when you take that same boxer and you have them start opening up with strikes, now one of their defensive tools is extended away from the face, and now they're also vulnerable to being hit as well. They open up here. Again, when they're attacking, they're also more susceptible to being attacked. So we're going to take that same idea. We're going to invite our opponent in to attack us. As they go to attack us, we identify their attack, we stuff it. That's the first step, is stuff their attack, defend it. And then we're going to follow it up with an attack of our own. And that's step number 2, the counterattack, taking advantage of their inferior position. So let's get things started today with talking about how to defend an opponent who's going to go in for a hip throw of some sort. A hip throw, an uchimata, maybe a taitoshi, something where they're going to come in turning and facing you with their hips to throw you. And the way we counter this is with a hip check. Let me show you. So when I'm here, typically my partner and I are gripped up. I have a power hand on him. He'll often have a power hand on you as well. I take a control hand anywhere from the cuff to the elbow to the armpit, and he does the same. Now in this scenario, one thing Ant might want to do is a hip throw, where he turns and faces, or he turns, comes in, fits his hips in, and then he elevates my hips, go ahead, and he tosses me over. So when Ant comes in for a hip throw, coming again, he wants my head going forward, my right shoulder rotating down in front of my left, and he wants his hips lower than my hips. And if he can do all these things, he can get me out of balance and pull me forward. So he wants my head forward, my right shoulder forward, and his hips lower than mine. So we're going to do everything the exact opposite. I'm going to lower my hips, I'm going to bring my head back, and I'm going to bring my right shoulder back. This is called a hip check. Ant wants to take his hips and get them in front of my hips, just like so. Correct? When I do a hip check, Ant goes to get his hips in front of mine, I block him out with my own hip. I use my own left hip to stop him from getting his hips across my hips. Okay, let's reset. So square up hip. As he comes in for his throw, I come in with my left hip, my head goes back, and I try to pull my right shoulder back. If possible, I would even like to take my right elbow out of his grip. So if you can pull this arm back with enough vigor, you might be able to strip that control grip. Okay? Now from this scenario, your opponent will be doing a number of different things, and there's a number of different ways we can go. If he comes into this hip check position, if he is really trying to force the throw, if I'm leaning back and he's trying to really go forward, I can take my grip on his belt here, I grab the belt, he's fighting forward, and I throw him forward using his own belt, off balancing him forward. And now we have a situation where I've thrown him by, and I can come down into the turtle position. I see that Ant has adopted an open turtle, so from here I can start putting my hooks in, my half claw grip, and I can power half him down to the floor. There's a number of other ways we can attack the turtle with submissions. And we're going to be seeing those over the course of the coming chapters as we go through our submission systems. There's a lot of them there. I'll show them, a few of them briefly. I'm not going to go into too much detail on those. The detail today is going to be on our hip check. Okay? So again, I'm here. Me and Andrew are squared up with each other. We're fighting. He comes in for a throw. I hip check. He tries to force the throw. I'm pulling backward. I'm immediately going to drive forward, pushing with the belt, throwing him down to a turtle position. Now from here, I come in, I cover the hips. Now there's a lot of different things we can do from here. I can take my hook, throwing it across. From here, I could go in, grabbing the lapel, going through, rolling through into a bow choke. There are other situations. He comes in, thrown down. I could snag the arm, roll through, going into an arm bar, for example. But the idea is that we initially stop the throw with a strong hip check, and if he's fighting forward, we throw him by using that grip on the belt, off balancing him forward. Now let's talk about somebody who's not committed so much to the throw. We're here, he comes in. I stand up, I hip check, and I feel like I've stopped his momentum dead in its tracks. I feel like there's not a strong forward pull. If anything, I feel like he's standing a little too upright. When I see this kind of thing happen, I take my left leg and I like to trip either the far leg, if this leg's across from me, or if he's a little shallower, sometimes this leg. Either one. I grab the lapel here. I still have the belt here in case he changes directions. If he ever wants to fight forward, I can always throw him forward. So belt and the lapel. Now from here, I'm biting back. I can either go trip here. Otherwise, I can trip the far leg as well if he steps across. If he steps across here, we hip check, grab, trip, down to the floor. Again, this typically works when you have somebody who's coming for the throw, but they haven't overcommitted their weight forward. So when I hip check, I stand him straight up. So we're here again, he goes for the throw, and we take him backward. One more time, man comes in for the throw, and we circle him back. Again, looking to make some sort of contact, tripping him in a backward direction as we take him backward. Now let's look at a situation where I hip check my opponent and they're not giving me enough power to drive him forward to throw by the turtle. They're not upright enough to allow me to take him in a backward direction. So we go with something that's right in the middle ground. We just squat down and we pick up the leg in a single leg. So we're here. He comes in for a throw. I hip check. I free my arm out here, but he can't quite get the throw. But he's not giving me the same backward pressure. I can't take him backward either. So from right here, I just put my head into his chest. I lower my level, bending at the knees, getting my two arms around his leg. One here above the knee, the other reaching down by the ankle. From here, I drive into him, lifting his leg up, and we take him down. Now, sometimes your opponents will go down a little easier. Sometimes they're going to be trickier to go down. You might have to employ some other methods, but that's the idea, is we come in with that single leg. We're here. Man comes in for a throw. I check. I come in, taking the leg up. Now from here, maybe I have the feet underneath, going to the knee, going to the hip, and take him down. You've learned how to finish single legs before. Finish with one of the single legs you know. All right, so that covers hip check. We can either, he comes in, once again, he comes in to check, or to throw, I hip check, I can either go forward to turtle, backwards with a trip, or straight down with a single. Next, let's look at throws that Ant might do where he drops to his knees to try to impart more momentum. So we've looked at hip check counters where I check him with my hip. Now let's start looking at the idea of step around counters where I step around his throw by being light on my feet. So in this scenario, Ant might come in for a drop Tayatoshi, for example, a drop cross forward trip. That dropping action can impart more falling body weight and momentum into his power hand and start pulling my head, and then he pulls me over his leg and trips me forward. So I can just step over the trip. Okay. When he goes to trip me, he goes to drop, I can step right over. Okay? So we're here, I see my partner go to turn and drop, I step over, and I end right here. Now from here, I have a height and a mobility advantage on my partner. From here it becomes very easy for me to reach around and grab the belt with my left hand. My left hand here goes over the back, and I grab his belt. Now from right here, I'm just going to take a step with my right leg, and I'm going to throw him with the belt grip. Throwing him down to the floor. And now we once again have a turtle situation. I can now start going in, throwing my hooks in, coming across, and going to my submission attacks. And learn how to do these in the future. Otherwise, you could certainly just attack the turtle like we learned how to do in classes in our Attacking the Turtle chapter. So another option we can do with a step around is a throw, because he is he's far less mobile than we are. We're here, he comes into a drop technique. I come in here just like so, I step around his throw. Now again, he's in a far worse position than I am. I can counter throw him very easily. My left hand can come up here controlling the armpit. My right hand can come down here and control the sleeve. And I can come in with my own reap. And my reap is going to be very effective because he's down on his knee. He can't step off of my reap the same way I can step off his. He's far less mobile. So one more time, he comes in for a cross trip. And we can take them down. All right, so that's looking around, or that was looking at stepping around our opponent's drop throws. So if they come in for a throw from the standing position, we start with a hip check. Then we take them forward with a throw by, backward with a back trip, or we drop into a single leg. Then we looked at a situation where Ant comes in with a throw, but he drops to his knees, taking away his mobility. I want to keep my feet light and step over or step around, going around the corner, stepping around my partner's throw. From that position, I'll still be on my feet. They're on their knee. You're in a far superior position than they are. It's very easy to start getting takedowns when you're on your feet, fighting somebody who's on their knees. You can snap them down to the floor like we looked at, grabbing the belt and throwing them to turtle. Otherwise, you can come in with your own counter throw. We're going to continue looking at the topic of stepping off your opponent's throws and trips and sweeps and reaps. But now we're going to look at doing it when he tries to use, again, trips, sweeps, and reaps. I step off his trip and I can try to counter trip. Okay? So, when I'm in here, and there are ways that Ant can take me down, either with back trips or forward trips. Go ahead and demonstrate one, doesn't matter what. He comes in, he hooks me back, he steps behind me, so that's a reap. So, oh, that's okay. So you can either use, I'll demonstrate one. So he can come in, tripping here, and then pushing me right back over that heel. He could try to come in with a reap, where he drops his knee to the floor, catches the ankle behind the knee, and takes it backward. They could also, that was a back trip and a back reap. Yeah, you can have that this way. Or they could also go with a forward trip where they come in and they stumble their opponent either down to the floor or they get them out of balance. Or they come in with a forward reap where I come in, try to take that leg up and away. So when we have an opponent who's going to be trying to use their feet to trip us, their legs to reap us, we want to be very light on our feet so we can always pick our knees up and step off of their trip attempts. Now not only that, but when our opponents go for a trip or a reap, they're oftentimes a little out of position. They'll oftentimes overextend themselves. So if we can develop the good timing to step off of their trip and then re-counter with our own, either our own trip, our own reap, our own sweep, whatever it is, we can capitalize with a takedown. So for example, we're locked up here, and Ant tries to come in, he tries to sweep my leg or trip me backwards. I step off, go ahead, stepping off, and now notice that when he comes in for that trip, he's a little out of balance. So as soon as I take my right leg and I put my right leg down, I can take my left leg and I can sweep his ankle to the inside. Bringing his head to one direction, sweeping his foot to the other. So again, we're here. He goes to hit that trip. And I can oftentimes stumble my partner down to the floor. If he comes in for a forward reap, for example, an Uchimata, you're going to turn and you're going to throw me forward and lift that right leg. Yes. He comes in for that forward reap. Once again, if I recognize that, I can step off of it. Here, he comes in for that reap. I step off the reap. Now he is in kind of a compromised position. I can now come through and I can hit a back trip down to the floor, for example. That's just a possibility. So again, I'm here. It's perfect. Go. He comes in for that reap. I step off, and I come in with maybe my own counter reap. Now, sometimes when you try to step off and come in with your own counter trips, counter sweeps, and counter reaps, sometimes your opponent's not going to let you get any of them because of this power hand. Remember, he's trying to do takedowns to you. If he's trying to do takedowns, that probably means he has a power hand. And remember that the power hand will shut down a lot of your takedown attempts. So sometimes you can step off and go into like shots. So like he goes to trip or reap or whatever. I take my leg. Sometimes I can step off and go into shots. But if he's a good man, I step off. As soon as I shoot or go to do anything, he's going to lock this power arm on. He comes in, he does do whatever takedown, and it's really hard for me to get into a leg. Do you remember? We always want to strip our opponent's power hand. We want to intercept it first. If we can't intercept it, we want to strip it. If we can't strip it, we want to weaken it by moving it down the lapel. And do you remember what we do if we can't intercept or strip or weaken? We lower our expectations. Remember? So, if we have a situation where I'm locked up, he has a power hand on me, and he's starting to go to trip or sweep or whatever it is, sometimes we want to lower our expectations. Sometimes I can't go through and get the actual forceful takedown that I want, but I can go through with maybe a sacrifice takedown and take him up over the top. So that was a side kick over sweep, for example. So down here, we're locked up, and he's going to come in with a takedown attempt. I go through, hitting a side kick over sweep for the win. So, We've now seen that we can either step around drop throws if he goes into a drop tai or toshi. We've seen that I can step around drop throws like so. And now we've seen that if he comes in for any sort of trip or anything, I can step around those throws as well. The key to being able to step up and out of these throws is being light on your feet, standing tall. If I'm crunched down and I'm really heavy on my feet moving around and he comes in for a trip and I try to step off, I'll oftentimes stumble. When I'm like this, it's really hard to pick your feet up. So if you are going with somebody who is standing tall, they're probably more of a judo player. I'd probably want to stand tall too. And now I know that if he starts going in for the trips and sweeps and reaps, it's because I'm light on my feet and standing tall, I can easily step up and out. Okay. If I have somebody who's playing crouched over, crouch, full crouch, this is for not somebody who's playing in a judo position. I probably don't need to be so worried about my ability to step off trips and sweeps. Now I'll need to be more worried about my ability to defend my legs. I can read my opponent's stance, and you can't read their mind obviously, but there's something you can kind of see what they're planning. If he comes in with a really low crouch stance, he's either going to be trying to pull guard, or he's going to try to shoot into my legs. Those are really his best options. But if I see him taking a tall stance, he's probably not going to be too interested in shooting into my legs, so I can relax a little bit there. But now I've got to be hyper aware about throws and keeping his power hand off me. So you need to learn to read your partner's body position and learn and figure out what do you think they're going to be trying to do to you and be ready for it. So far, we have seen stopping our opponent's throws using a hip check. That's like forward powerful throws, like hip throws, maybe do a Chimata. Then we saw the idea of stepping around drop throws, where we step around them because they're not mobile, they drop to a knee. We simply step around them, get an advantage, snap them down to the floor or throw them. Then we looked at the idea of stepping off of trips, and stepping off of sweeps, and stepping off of reaps. Now, we're going to look at the idea of dealing with somebody who wants to shoot in on your legs, dealing with a wrestler, dealing with single legs, dealing with double legs. When I shoot in on hand, I want to get my head to his torso. Okay? Let's get your arm out of the way, thank you. I want my head to be in here tight to him, so I can control the distance, keep him really tight, and take him down. He wants the opposite. He wants my head off his torso. If I can't get my head to the torso, it becomes very difficult to finish single legs and double legs. Not impossible, but difficult. So one of our main things is we don't want our opponent's head to get to our torso. We have many lines of defense to do this. Our head is our first line of defense. Our hands are the second line of defense. The elbows are the third line of defense. And the hips are the final line of defense. Okay, so we start with the head. I'm in here, and I match head height with Ant. If Ant comes in with a low stance or crouch, and I come in like this, it's very easy for Ant to start to shoot into my legs. So if I think he might be interested in shooting, and I see him taking a wrestler stance, I'm going to take my own head low as well. And you'll see, even without the use of my hands, I'm going to ask Ant to shoot into my legs. It's very hard for Ant to shoot even with just head position. Now imagine if we add our arms into the mix. Now he's got to get through our head and our arms. So don't forget about the head. A lot of people come in here, they play with the hands, they forget about using the head. Use head position. If he tries to come in on a shot, keep our head in his way. Then we got the hands. If he manages to beat the head and he shoots in, we want to post hands. I can post hands on the head. We'll see this later with sprawling as I push the head down. I put hands on the shoulders, I can thumb post here. So if I'm here and Ant beats my head, he gets in, I get hands on the shoulders. He now tries to get in for a shot, he can't get his head to my torso. It's very difficult. Okay, now Ant thinks to himself, all right, I see what Brandon's doing. He's keeping his head in my way and he's keeping his hands in my way. What if I quickly thumb post underneath Brandon's hands and pop them up? To get the hands out of my way when I shoot. Surely that'll work, right? The idea is solid. He pushes my hands up, he goes underneath my hands, he gets the shot. The third line of defense is the elbows. We're going to make elbow frames in front of the shoulders, in front of the collarbones. Ant's going to pop my wrist out of the way, and I drop my elbow in front of the shoulder. Or here, he pops the hands up. I take my elbow right here in front of the shoulder. So this time, Ant, I want you to commit a little bit more to the legs. Drop, so we go. Can you drop your knees?
Yeah.
Okay. Exactly. I get my elbows in here, I push away with my elbow, sprawling my leg and my elbow away from each other, making sure he can't get my leg. One more time, we're here. He gets the hands out of the way. I get my elbow down, using my elbow to make space between my leg and his shoulder. Then last, we had sprawling. Head is the first line of defense, hands are the second, elbows are the third. If he gets past all three, the last thing we can do is sprawl. Okay? In a sprawl, I'm going to put my tops of my feet on the mat and drop my knee down to the floor. So my knee starts to slide out and away from him. As I do this, I also like to cover the head. Let's rotate. I sprawl to get your signaling. I like to cover the head. I'll push the head down, I'll cover it with my hips. Putting in whizzers, and I'll sprawl that right leg back and away. So essentially, I'm getting my hips in between his shoulder and my legs. So one more time on the sprawl. Comes in. Notice how I put the top of my foot on the mat right away, and I drop to my right knee. Now from here, this won't always break the grip right away. You'll notice he still has a grip. That's not good. If he can start to pick his head up and rise, that's going to start to give me problems. That's perfect. So one of the first things I do once I start sprawling is I make sure I cover the head. Now when he goes to pick his head up, I push the head down and I cover. Now with his head right underneath my hips, he goes to pick his head up, and all of my body weight's on top of his head now. I keep his head covered. Now from here, I'm going to put my arms in here in front of the knees. You could even take your thumb post and actually push the knees right here. Otherwise, you go hands in here. I'm doing the same thing on the other side, where I just take my hand here toward the pocket of the hip. And now I'm going to sprawl, pushing myself, using my arms here to push myself away from the hips. If that's not strong enough, again, you can use thumb posts on the knees. From here, I push myself away from the knees. As Ant tries to bring his knees back in underneath of him, I'm going to keep those knees away as I sprawl. Ant wants to bring his knees in underneath his chest. He wants to crawl those knees forward and start to posture up tall and start to take me down here. I don't want him to bring his knees in. So when I'm here, I push the head, I cover the head, I push the knees. If Ant tries to bring his knees in, I don't let his knees come forward. I keep him extended. And we take our sprawl that way. So again, when my opponent shoots at my legs, your head is your first line of defense. Use your head height to match their head height to block them out. Hands, number 2, second line of defense. Post on the head, post on the shoulders. You can even grab the wrists. I didn't talk about this. If I'm in here and I think Ant might want to shoot, here, Ant go to shoot. Can't get my legs. If I just control that wrist, or maybe I come up on a collar tie and a wrist grip, and I'm here, Ant go to shoot. You use both arms if you want. He only has one free hand. So the head is the first line of defense. Hands are the second. elbows in the third. If he gets through the hands, get those elbows in. And use those elbows to make space. If they get past the elbows, now it's a matter of driving your knee down to the floor, putting the tops of your shoelaces to the mat so you slide. If I put the ball of my foot on the floor, he shoots, and if I put the ball of my foot down and he drives into me, he stands me straight up. When I get the flats down, he drives into me, my leg can slide. So we put the tops of the shoelaces down so I slide back. So again, head is number 1, hands number 2, elbows number 3, and hips number 4 with the sprawl. Now, let's imagine that Ant gets into deep on a single leg or deep on a double leg, okay? Let's do a single leg first. Let's say Ant comes in on a single leg and he picks my leg up to this position here. There's a number of different ways we can go from here. We can work with 2 good counter throws. I can grab the far cuff and the belt. Okay, from this position, he cannot stop me from grabbing the belt. I can get control over his hips through the use of the belt grip. We've seen in the past that I use the belt as well to get him out of balance, and I'm using it again here. So I grab the belt. My left hand comes here and grab the cuff. Now from here, I'm going to hop my left leg to the outside ankle line, and now I can throw him with an uchimata to counter his single leg. Or an uchimata is a straightforward reap, where I reap his leg out with my own leg. So again, he comes in on a single leg. He gets in, I grab the belt, the cuff, I hop, I throw him down. We also have a hook sweep, a sacrifice takedown. He puts in a deep single. Same idea, I'm going to grab the belt to get control of the hips. Except this time we're doing everything in reverse. Rather than grabbing the far cuff, my left hand is going to grab the near cuff. I reach between my legs, grabbing the cuff. Rather than hopping to the outside ankle line this way, where we face the same direction, I hop to the outside ankle line over here, where we face the opposite direction. And now from here, I'm going to sit to my butt. And as I sit to my butt, I pull his hips over my head, and I use my right hook. That's rotate. I use my right hook to make a butterfly hook and elevate his hips. So I hop, down, and I throw him up and over the top. Now from here, I scissor my legs and get on top. Very, very good counter to the single leg. Very strong counter. One more time, he comes in on a single leg. I grab the belt, I grab the sleeve, I hop, I sit, and I toss him.